What happens when you put a career-focused woman with 2 kids trying to balance home and work life in a room with a microphone? Lots of laughter, tears, and great advice. Welcome to 2 Kids and a Career. So excited for our guest, Jamie Case. How are you?
Good.
Oh, man, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. So Jamie is in the animal welfare industry. She is the executive director at Gateway Pet Guardians. You can learn more about Gateway Pet Guardians, gatewaypets.org. Jamie and I met because, well, we're animal lovers, and she's doing a lot in the community for animals. And just the other day, we met and we had a discussion about what Gateway Pet Guardians, what they're doing. But we also talked about the struggle of your passion and being a mom. You also have 2 kids.
Yep.
A little girl named Ella and a little boy named Charlie. And it just was interesting to hear your take on what you're experiencing. So let's kind of do a quick recap of what's going on with you right now and what you're experiencing at home.
Yeah. So we are my organization that I've been with for 10 years. So we started volunteering, my husband and I, and we got head over heels involved in the organization. I became the executive director 10 years ago. And it's an industry where, you're always working constantly. And we decided to start a family 5.5 years ago. And so we have a daughter and a son. Our youngest is 2.5. And within the last month, the rescue has purchased a very large building. Me as the ED, I do have 7 other staff members, but just added them recently. We're undertaking this giant project. So I'm working a lot. And I, the struggle that I may have said to you is like, I want to work a lot.
Right.
I'm kind of a workaholic, like literally Googling it on my phone to see how I can help myself. But I feel terrible because I want to work. It's my passion. I've worked towards this for 10 years of my life. And, I want to be there every second of the day. And so I'm juggling with how to manage that with 2 small children, 5.5 and 2.5.
It's crazy, though, because I'm so glad you admitted that you want to work. A lot of women don't want to admit that out loud. And I don't understand why. Like, it's okay to say you want to work.
Yeah.
There's just this stigma that you shouldn't. I can honestly say I could not be a stay-at-home mom.
Oh, my gosh, me neither. Never.
I couldn't. This is my passion, working.
Yeah.
I mean, there's passion there. Of course, I would love to spend more time with my family, but I am a happier person when I'm doing what I love.
And I do feel like, this is said a lot of like you're teaching your children that work ethic and that, I always tease my sister-in-law because, her and I are the same way that like we're strong, independent women.
Mm-hmm.
And I want my daughter to see that, obviously.
Yes.
And I want my son to see that as well. In our family, my husband works at the shelter in the mornings until about 10 o'clock. And he comes home and he's with the kids the rest of the day. So we have this different lifestyle of it's not, dad goes to work all day and mom's home with the kids. It's kind of reversed in our life, except my husband also works. So there is a lot of juggling. And I just shared a post on my Facebook. It was a TED Talk about there is no such thing as work-life balance and it's work-life-Jenga. And I felt much better reading that because that's exactly right. There's no balance.
So what do you do? Because I know you said recently your youngest.
Yes.
Mom.
I know. He keeps saying, you, because he just wants me to be holding him constantly. And I am I love doing that. But I'm also a very distracted mom right now. And I feel terribly guilty about it because I have a lot of things going on in my mind and I feel not present with my kids when I'm there. And if I'm at the building, you feel not present with, your work entirely because you're thinking about your kids and it's a struggle. And I don't know if anybody will ever figure that out. It's just doing the best that you can to figure it out.
And the guilt, it's very easy to say, don't feel guilty, but
so much guilt. You always feel guilt.
Yeah. I mean, when you leave and they're like, don't go.
Oh my God, yes.
It just is the hardest thing because you try to explain. And I know I try to explain to my oldest, like, hey, I got to go to work. Why?
Yeah.
And I joke around and I say, well, because I got to make some money so that I can feed you and buy you clothes and buy you stuff. And I mean, I know she doesn't get it. But, the other thing for me, my girls go to school and when I leave them in the hands of other women.
Yeah.
And that's hard too. But what I try to tell myself a lot is they're learning so much more.
110%.
Then there's no way.
There's so much debate about TV and using it as a babysitter and things like that. And I will tell you, I feel like the worst mom in the world this week because I was gone for 12 hours yesterday and I'm exhausted today. And we watched a movie on the couch this morning before I left, and I was like, I probably shouldn't. We should be playing or doing something like
you
that.
have to do it.
But we were snuggling, so.
And you being present, that's what they cared about, not that they weren't learning about their colors.
Right.
I always say that I say 3 days a week they're at school, and those 3 days a week, they're learning.
Yep.
And they're getting fed healthy food. So I'm doing it right. I mean, what else can you do? You know what I mean? You can't. And another thing, and I think I've maybe admitted this to maybe one or two other people, and I don't know why I feel guilty about this either, but when I'm at work sometimes, well, most of the times, I love my girls with all of my being. I mean, anybody that knows me knows that, but I try not to think about them when I'm at work because it does make it hard. It makes me go, I want to be with them.
Yeah.
So
Then you're with the, I forget how old, your oldest is
2.5 and then 4 months.
Oh my God love you, woman.
You went through it.
But I know, but so then it's, but then you go home to them. I have to this is maybe be mean, but thank God my 5.5-year-old is she's finally getting over the large emotions, but the 2.5-year-old and the emotions, I'm there for 2 hours and I'm like,
are you saying you want to go back to work?
Get me out of here.
I know. I just it was so crazy. These meltdowns. I don't want blueberry muffin. I want the chocolate chip. I'm like, oh my God.
Yesterday, I have to share this story with you. So yesterday I had a meeting in the morning and thankfully, I can be very flexible. I can bring my kids with me if I need to. So I had a meeting at Bread Company yesterday morning with a few other directors. And I go there and I get them both out of bed. They are not used to getting up that early because usually we can be kind of lazy in the morning.
Right.
So I pull them both out of bed and I'm at Bread Company by 8:15, which again, very early. I get the 2.5-year-old something I feel like he would like, and I get the 5.5-year-old a cinnamon roll because she loves cinnamon rolls. 5.5-year-old doesn't want a cinnamon roll.
Of course not.
And she's fine with not eating. She's not. She's coloring. Not a big deal. The 2.5-year-old is angry that she gets the cinnamon roll. And I haven't even talked to the people that I'm meeting yet. I'm just trying to get these kids set up so that, because Dad's coming to pick them up in a little bit, whatever. So I say, you can have some of the cinnamon roll. I cut it in half.
Oh, no.
That was the wrong thing to do. So we are screaming in the middle of Bread Company, and these other people that one of them had children, thank God, but the other two people I was meeting have no children, so they don't understand.
They don't get it. They don't get it.
And I take the 2-year-old in the bathroom who's screaming. And then finally my husband shows up and he was like, am I leaving already? I was like,
Get out.
Get them out of here.
Go right now. And that's the thing too, when you don't have kids, you don't get it. And then, I was that person, but.
Right. So was I.
Yes, it really is true with these toddlers.
Well, and how old are you?
I am 42.
Yeah. And I'm 38. So we had our children later.
Right. That's a whole nother episode. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah.
I like to think that we're calmer and, things don't bother us as much as, say, the 25-year-old mom.
No way could I have done. I give credit to anyone who had a baby in their 20s because, no. But there's something interesting, too, with you and your industry, the animal welfare industry, I mean, having kids and being in the animal welfare industry is kind of a new thing. And I never even really thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, animal rescue, which, where I'm trying to even kind of strike that word from my vocabulary, because I don't want to see rescue as taking someone's pet that needs to relinquish them. I don't want to think that I'm rescuing that animal. I'm helping that person out with bringing that animal in. So, but animal rescue was such 10 years ago, was a middle-aged white woman who maybe didn't have kids, most likely didn't have kids, maybe married, maybe not. And they loved animals, and they spent all their time with animals, which this industry can suck the life out of you. And you kind of, you do reduce your relationships with people because you're so focused on saving as many animals as you can that you start to knock down those things. So it's never been an industry where there's families and there's, you're married and have babies because there's no time for it. However, so 5.5 years ago, we had our daughter, and there was another woman who was running a cat organization here in town, and she reached out and she was like, "Can we just have coffee? Like, this is so hard having kids and trying to do this at the same time." She said, "You're the only other person that I know that we can talk to about this and managing that. Like, how do you give the time to your children that you want and run an organization?" And so her and I had coffee, and it's been this really cool transition, though. Like, we're making it more accessible and more mainstream to have families that, we're seeing more foster families with children. And, we're placing them with dogs that and the families want to show their kids this. We're helping out animals. We may not be able to bring a child into our family and foster a child, but we can foster an animal and show that our family, values their life and how to give back in the community. So, yeah, it's new and it's really interesting. We have a little mom group on Facebook with our volunteers and fosters that work within our organization, and it's GPG Moms. So, we can kind of talk about it.
It's interesting, too, that you bring that up with the foster families and the kids, because one thing I know from my experience with any sort of animal organization, a big question a lot of people have when they want to go to adopt, are they good with kids?
Yeah.
So what a great way, though,
absolutely,
to have these dogs
4 years ago when Ella was really one of the only kiddos that we had in our group.
I remember this.
We would take her up to the shelter and she'd be the kid tester.
Yeah.
As terrible as that sounds, we had a good idea of the dog's behavior before that, but we just wanted to make sure that they weren't overly rambunctious or anything like that. So, but now there's so many. One volunteer sent me, when Charlie was born, a little onesie that said littlest GPG volunteer. And we have sent that onesie to all of the volunteers that have had kids along the way and have gotten pictures with all of them. And it's so cute to see.
It's changing.
Yeah. And we had an open house at our new building on Saturday, and we bought a former school. So the school has a gym, and there's one of our other staff members has a 4-year-old. And so they bring their scooters and they have the basketballs and they just run around that place like crazy. And I love that. I feel like that is really cool for them to, in 30 years, they're going to look back on their life and say, I grew up there. I grew up in that shelter.
Right. It just, talking to you and hearing you say out loud, and you didn't hesitate when you told me, this is hard.
Yeah.
I want to work.
Yeah.
I have 2 passions that I'm trying to partake in, and that you don't have the answers.
Yeah.
We don't need answers. We just need to talk about it.
And then the other thing that we haven't even discussed are our husbands.
Oh.
And I tell my husband, I just told him this week, I'm sorry, you're at the bottom of the list. You feel so terrible.
Well, I don't know if you have read Rachel Hollis's first book, Girl Wash Your Face, which
no.
A lot of these ideas for this podcast came from that. But she has a follow-up book, Girl Stop Apologizing. And I'm in the midst of it. But she talks about your dreams and your goals, and the difference between a dream and the difference between a goal. And sometimes you have to sacrifice a lot of things to make your goal happen. But if it's what you truly love
Yeah.
and it's what brings you happiness, then you don't see your husband for a few weekends and you make up for those times that you don't see each other. And it's absolutely true. You've got to figure it all out.
Right.
It's not an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
It's Jenga.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't that make more sense?
But what I think you and me and so many other moms that are working moms, what we can say is we don't love our children any less because we're working.
Correct. It's tough. I feel so lucky that like they get drug along to a lot of things, and I would love, someday to see a lot of kids programming in our shelter. And and more staff that have children, and maybe we have that daycare option in our shelter as well that we can, for staff members that need and want to have their kids close. I've worked out of my house for 10 years, and so mom was always just in one room away, and I loved that. They could pop in and tell me their funny story. They could come in and have lunch with me. I can go have lunch with them. So the fact that I'm gone for out of the house for 12 hours is very hard on everyone.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's an adjustment for you all.
Yeah. Yeah. And last week was really rough. I feel better this week, but 1 week at a time. And, you always say this as a parent, but like everything's a phase.
Yes.
And it goes away. And you have to remind yourself that like just life is it's a phase.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
You're going to be on this podcast lots because we have lots to talk about.
I love this.
You got this, Mama. I promise. You got this.
Thanks. Need to hear that sometimes.
I know. Just keep it in your head. Maybe we should record each other. You got this. Yeah. You got this. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and if you're feeling really generous, write me a review. And don't forget to join me next week for a new episode of Two Kids and a Career.